help me reach 1,000 subscribers. Please like the video and share your thoughts on the video. Your feedback helps make the contents better. Now let's get to the story.
The old man grabbed my arms so tight I almost dropped my keys. His eyes were darting left and right like he was about to tell me where they buried Jimmy Hoffa. And what he showed me on that phone, I swear the ground could have swallowed me whole and I would have welcomed it. But let me back up. Because if I just jump straight to that moment, you're not going to understand the full weight of what I saw. You're not going to feel what I felt standing in that parking lot, the Florida sun beating down on my neck while my entire life quietly rearranged itself into something I didn't recognize. My name is Kevin. I am 38 years old, and up until a random Tuesday afternoon at Westfield Mall, I genuinely thought I had a pretty good life. Nothing flashy, nothing that would make your jaw drop, but solid. Real. The kind of life where you come home and you actually want to be there. I grew up in Daytona Beach, Florida, middle child of 3 boys, raised by a mother who worked double shifts at a hospital and a father who coached Little League on weekends. I learned early that you work hard, you keep your word, and you treat people right. Those were the 3 rules in our house. Simple. Plain. Non-negotiable. I did 2 years of community college, transferred to UCF, got a degree in business management, and landed a decent job at a logistics company where I worked my way up over 11 years to become a regional operations manager. I'm not telling you this to brag. I'm telling you because I want you to understand that I was not some naive, oblivious guy who stumbled through life with his eyes closed. I paid attention. I was careful. I thought I knew how to read people. Apparently, I was wrong about that. Now, before I continue, if you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these stories matter. Hit that subscribe button right now. It costs you nothing and it means everything. Okay. Back to Kevin and his spectacularly crumbling Tuesday. I met my wife, Nicole, at a mutual friend's birthday party about 9 years ago. She was standing by the snack table eating chips like she had somewhere better to be, and I found that oddly attractive. Most people at parties try too hard. Nicole didn't try at all. She had this quiet confidence about her, dark hair, sharp eyes, a laugh that she didn't give out easily, but when she did, it hit different. We dated for 2 years, got engaged, got married in a small ceremony at a botanical garden in Orlando. 72 people, open bar, her cousin sang Ave Maria and cried through the whole thing. It was perfect, or so I thought. The first 7 years of our marriage were genuinely good. We bought a house in a suburb outside Orlando, adopted a dog named Pretzel. Don't look at me, she named him, and settled into the kind of comfortable routine that married people either love or slowly resent. We had date nights. We took vacations. We argued about normal things like whose turn it was to call the plumber and whether pineapple belonged on pizza. For the record, it does not, and I will die on that hill. But somewhere around the 2-year mark before that parking lot Tuesday, something shifted. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. Nicole started working later. Started going to the gym at odd hours. Started being on her phone more, but somehow always putting it face down when I walked into the room. Now listen, I'm not the type to go snooping through someone's phone. That's not me. I believe in trust. I believe in giving people the benefit of the doubt. My dad always said, Kevin, assume good intentions until you can't anymore. So that's what I did. I assumed good intentions. I assumed the late nights were because her marketing firm had taken on new clients. I assumed the gym was because she'd mentioned wanting to train for a half marathon. I assumed the face-down phone was just a habit, maybe something she read about screen time and mindfulness. I assumed, and assumed, and assumed. And then came that Tuesday. We decided to go to Westfield Mall together because she wanted to pick up some things from a home goods store and I needed new sneakers. It was supposed to be a regular afternoon. Pretzel was at home probably destroying a pillow. We were going to grab lunch at that Thai place in the food court afterward. Simple plan. Nice day. We'd been in the mall for maybe an hour when I found the shoes I wanted at a sporting goods store near the east entrance. Nicole said she'd meet me outside by the car in 20 minutes. She just needed to grab a few more things. I kissed her on the cheek, grabbed my bag and headed to the parking lot. The Westfield parking lot in the middle of the day is its own special kind of chaos. People circling for spots like vultures, someone always blocking traffic for no reason, at least one cart rolling dangerously toward a bumper. I'd parked on the second level of the garage, Section C, which I remember specifically because I always forget where I park, and I'd made a mental note. Kevin. Section C. Like the vitamin. You've got this. I was cutting through the first level toward the staircase when I noticed the security guard. He was older, maybe late 60s, stocky build, with a gray mustache that had clearly been his most important feature since 1987. He was standing near the entrance pillar, and I almost walked right past him. But then he called out, "Hey, excuse me, son." I stopped and turned around. He was looking at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. Not unfriendly but serious, like a man who had made a decision about something and was committed to it. "Yeah," I said. "You just came out of the mall with a woman. Dark hair, red blouse?" I felt something tighten in my chest, but I kept my voice easy. "That's my wife." "Why?" He looked at me for a long second. Then he glanced around like we were in a spy movie, and lowered his voice. "You need to see something," he said. I debated whether to say anything. Been going back and forth on it for the last 20 minutes. But if it were me, I'd want to know. And then he held out his phone. I looked at the screen, and I froze. The photo was taken right there in the mall. I could see the fountain in the background, the one near the food court entrance. The timestamp in the corner read 1:47 p.m., about 30 minutes ago, right around when Nicole and I had split up inside. In the photo, Nicole was standing close, very close, to a man I had never seen in my life. They weren't just standing next to each other the way strangers do. She had her hand on his chest. He had his hand on her waist. And they were looking at each other the way people look at each other when they think nobody is watching. The security guard, his name tag said Earl. Let me scroll through 3 more photos. Each one worse than the last. Not because anything inappropriate happened right there in the mall, but because of the intimacy in them. The casual, practiced, comfortable intimacy of 2 people who had been doing this for a while. "I'm sorry, son," Earl said quietly. I handed him his phone back. My hand was completely steady, which surprised me because the inside of my chest felt like someone had dropped a bowling ball into it from a great height. "How long were you watching?" I asked. "I wasn't watching," he said. "I was doing a routine walk. Saw them near the fountain. Something didn't look right, so I took the photos. Been a security guard for 22 years. You develop a sense for these things." He paused. "She called someone on the phone after the man left. Stepped away toward the east wing. I recognized you coming out because I'd seen you both walk in together earlier. I stood there in that parking garage with the smell of exhaust and hot concrete around me, and I had 2 choices. I could go back into that mall and blow the whole thing up right there in front of the Andean's pretzel stand. Or I could be smart about it. Now look, I've seen enough of those mall confrontation videos online to know they never go the way you imagine they will. Someone cries, someone yells, someone films it on their phone, and then it's on the internet forever with a title like, 'Man Loses It at Mall,' and everyone in the comments is roasting the wrong person. That was not going to be my story." I thanked Earl. I genuinely thanked him because that man didn't have to do anything. He could have finished his shift and gone home and eaten his dinner and let me keep living in my comfortable little world of bad assumptions. But he didn't. So I shook his hand and I asked if I could get his number just in case I needed anything later. He gave it to me without hesitation. Then I walked to my car, sat in the driver's seat, and stared at the concrete wall in front of me for about 4 minutes. My wife was still in that mall. She would be out in about 15 minutes, smiling, carrying her bags, probably ready to talk about what she wanted to order at the Thai place. I took out my phone. And instead of calling her, I called my older brother, Dennis. Dennis is 43, works in IT security, divorced once himself, and is the most straightforward person I know. I told him everything in about 90 seconds. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Don't do anything yet. Come to my place tonight. Just be cool until you can think straight." That was exactly what I needed to hear. Nicole came out of the mall 14 minutes later. She was smiling. She had 2 bags. She asked if I found the sneakers I wanted. I told her I did. She said the Thai place would hit different today because she was starving. I said sounds good. And we drove to lunch. and I ordered pad thai. And I watched her talk about some show she wanted to start watching, and I nodded and I smiled at the right moments, and on the inside I was building something. Not rage. Not yet. A plan. Now here's where things get interesting. And by interesting, I mean the kind of interesting that makes you want to cancel your Netflix subscription and just watch real life unfold, because real life is so much more unhinged. That night, after Nicole fell asleep, I drove to Dennis's place. We sat at his kitchen table with 2 cups of coffee, and I told him everything from the beginning. All the small things I'd been dismissing for 2 years. The late nights. The gym at odd hours. The face-down phone. The photos. Dennis listened without interrupting, which is not something he normally does. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and said, "Kevin, man, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but some of what you're describing, I noticed things too." I looked at him. "At your birthday dinner in March," he said carefully, "Nicole got a text. She laughed at it. But when I asked what was funny, she said it was just a meme from a coworker. But her screen was facing me for half a second, and the contact's name I saw wasn't a coworker name. It was saved as a letter. Just one letter." "What letter?" I asked. He held up 2 fingers. "R," he said. I sat with that for a second. Then I asked Dennis, very calmly, if he still had that friend who did private investigation work on the side. He did. Her name was Tamara, and she owed him a favor from a thing I won't get into here because it's Dennis's business. Point is, by 11 o'clock that night, we had made a call. Tamara was efficient. She was also slightly terrifying in the best possible way, the kind of woman who could find your Wi-Fi password and your deepest secrets in the same afternoon. She asked me for Nicole's license plate, her workplace address, her usual schedule, and the name of her gym. I had all of it. Within 48 hours, Tamara had confirmed not just that Nicole was seeing someone, but who he was. His name was Ryan. He was 34, worked in real estate, drove a silver BMW, and, here's the part that made my coffee go cold, he had been in our house. Twice. While I was at work. He wasn't just some random guy she'd met recently. According to what Tamara pulled together through surveillance and some very creative social media archaeology, this had been going on for 14 months. 14 months. That's not a mistake. That's not a moment of weakness. That's a whole second life, carefully maintained and deliberately hidden. Now subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Because what happens next? The planning, the execution, and the moment everything came crashing down on Nicole and Ryan like a very organized, very satisfying avalanche, you do not want to miss a single detail. This is the part where Kevin stops assuming good intentions. This is the part where Kevin gets strategic. I want to be honest with you about something. When I was sitting with all of this information, the photos, Tamara's report, the 14 months, the fact that this man had been inside my house, there was a version of me that wanted to go completely nuclear. Call her family. Send the photos to everyone. Drive to Ryan's office and have a very loud, very public conversation. I won't pretend the thought didn't cross my mind because it absolutely did, and for about 20 minutes on a Thursday night I was fully committed to it. But Dennis talked me down. And Tamara, who I was now paying for continued assistance, gave me some advice that I think about a lot now. She said, "Kevin, the worst thing you can do right now is act out of pain. The best revenge isn't anger. It's information, timing, and making sure that when everything comes out, you're the one standing clean on the other side." I wrote that down. On an actual piece of paper. Old school. So here's what I did. First, I contacted a divorce attorney. Her name was Diane, and she was the kind of attorney who made opposing lawyers want to call in sick. She explained to me that Florida is a no-fault divorce state, which meant the affair itself wouldn't automatically change the settlement, but documentation of marital waste, meaning money spent on the affair partner, could absolutely be considered. Tamara and I went through 14 months of our joint account statements together. The hotel charges Nicole had buried in miscellaneous. The dinners at restaurants I'd never been taken to. The weekend she told me was a work retreat in Tampa that, shockingly, involved a hotel room for 2 in Clearwater. The number we found was not small. Second, I quietly moved a portion of my personal savings to a separate account. Something Diane told me was completely legal and advisable given the circumstances. I wasn't hiding anything that was mine. I was just making sure it stayed mine. Third, and this is the part one I'm most proud of professionally speaking, I found out that Ryan, our charming real estate guy with the silver BMW, had some professional complications of his own. See, when you're in real estate and you're not exactly careful about the ethics of some of your transactions, and when the woman you're spending time with happens to be married to a man who works in logistics and has a very detail-oriented brain, things have a way of surfacing. Tamara found a trail of some very questionable property flipping activity involving undisclosed relationships with appraisers. Nothing I personally reported. I sent the information anonymously to the right place and let the appropriate people handle it. I'm not vindictive. I'm just thorough. Fourth, and listen, I debated including this because it might make me sound petty. I reached out to Earl. I took him to lunch at a diner near the mall. I told him what I'd found out. He shook his head slowly and said, "Son, I have seen a lot in 22 years, but this one's going to stay with me." I told him his tip had been the thing that changed everything. He waved it off like it was nothing. He got the meatloaf special and we talked about baseball for 20 minutes and I left feeling, weirdly, a little better about humanity. Because there are still Earls in the world. And that matters. The confrontation, when it finally happened, was nothing like what you see in movies. There was no screaming match. No thrown dishes. No dramatic revelation at a dinner party where everyone gasps. It was a Wednesday evening, Pretzel was on the couch, and I had arranged for Dennis to be parked outside just in case. I set up a voice recorder on my phone, legal in Florida as long as one party to the conversation consents, and I consented to recording myself, and I sat down across from Nicole at the kitchen table. I said very quietly, "I want to talk about Ryan." The color left her face so fast it was like watching a time-lapse of winter coming. She tried 4 different stories in about 90 seconds. Old friend. Just a coworker she'd run into. Someone she was helping with a project. Someone she'd met at the gym. I let her run through all of them. I didn't interrupt. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at her the way Earl had looked at me in that parking garage, seriously, with the decision already made. Then I put Tamara's report on the table. Then I put Earl's photos on the table. Then I put the bank statements on the table, highlighted. Nicole looked at all of it for a long time. And then she did something I genuinely was not prepared for. She started crying, not the panicked, caught red-handed kind of crying, but the deep, exhausted kind. Like she'd been carrying something for a long time and had finally put it down. "I'm sorry," she said. And here's the thing about that. I believed her. Not because I forgave her in that moment, but because I could see she meant it. The affair was real, but so was whatever guilt she'd been living with. That didn't change anything. But it complicated the simple narrative of monster wife and wronged husband that I'd been building in my head for 3 weeks. I told her I had already spoken to an attorney. I told her the timeline we'd documented. I told her that I intended to file, and that I expected the process to be clean and honest, and that if it wasn't, I had more than enough documentation to make things significantly more complicated for both her and Ryan. She nodded. She didn't call a lawyer that night to fight me. She called her sister. Now, and I want you to stay with me here because this is where the plot takes a turn I promise I did not see coming either. About a week after that conversation, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer it, but something made me pick up. It was Ryan. I know. Hold on. He didn't call to threaten me. He didn't call to posture or negotiate or do any of the things I would have expected. He called because, apparently, Nicole had also been lying to him. See, Ryan thought Nicole was separated. Not going through anything messy, not still deeply embedded in a functioning marriage. He thought she was basically single, in the process of leaving, just waiting for the right moment to formalize things. He had been telling himself a story too, just a different one than me. He found out the truth about the same time I confronted her, because Nicole, suddenly faced with everything collapsing at once, had apparently made several panicked phone calls in one night. And Ryan had done some digging of his own and realized that the picture he'd been given of her life was not accurate. So Ryan, and look, I don't like this man, let's be very clear, I will never like this man, but Ryan was also technically not entirely wrong to feel deceived. He'd been lied to too, just in a different direction. I told him I appreciated the call, but I wasn't interested in a conversation. He said he understood. He asked if there was anything he could do. I said there was not. He apologized in the stiff, uncomfortable way that people apologize when they know they're also at fault but aren't quite ready to say that part out loud. I said okay and I hung up. I sat with that for a long time. The divorce was filed 6 weeks after that Tuesday at the mall. Diane was, as advertised, excellent. The documentation of marital waste held up. The settlement was fair, not punishing but fair, and it accounted for every highlighted line on those bank statements. Nicole didn't contest it. Her attorney negotiated a few things, we adjusted a few things, and then it was done. The house went on the market. I found an apartment on the east side of town, close enough to Dennis that we could grab food without it being a whole production. Pretzel stayed with me. That was non-negotiable from the beginning. Nicole didn't even try to argue it. To be honest, she probably knew he'd always been more my dog than hers. He'd been sleeping on my side of the bed for 3 years. Here's the part that I think of as the actual revenge, though. Not the settlement. Not the documentation. Not even Ryan's professional complications catching up to him, which they did. I saw his agency pop up in a local news piece about a real estate ethics inquiry about 3 months after everything happened, and I will admit I read that article twice. The actual revenge is this. About 4 months after the divorce was finalized, I was at a cookout at Dennis's place. His girlfriend had invited a few people, just a casual thing, burgers and cold drinks, and someone had brought a speaker with a playlist that nobody could agree on. I wasn't really in the mood to meet new people. I was still in that phase where you're functionally fine but emotionally sort of like a building that's been renovated, structurally sound, but you can still see where the old walls used to be. There was a woman there named Carla. She worked in occupational therapy, she'd grown up in Jacksonville, and she had the kind of humor that sneaks up on you. She'd say something completely deadpan and you'd be 3 seconds in before you realized it was hilarious. We talked for 2 hours without either of us noticing the time. She asked me what I did and I told her and she said, "So you basically make sure things end up where they're supposed to be?" And I said, "Yes, professionally speaking, that's exactly it." And she said, "That's a good skill to have in life generally." I thought about that a lot afterward. I didn't ask for her number that night. It was too soon and I knew it, and I respected myself enough not to rush into something just because it felt good in the moment. But Dennis's girlfriend gave me Carla's number about 2 weeks later without being asked, because apparently Carla had mentioned me and apparently Dennis's girlfriend had been waiting for an opportunity to play matchmaker ever since I announced the divorce. I texted Carla. She texted back in about 45 seconds. We got coffee. Then dinner. Then a Saturday afternoon walk with Pretzel, during which Pretzel decided he loved her and demonstrated this by sitting on her feet for 20 minutes. I'm not going to tell you we're engaged or that everything is perfect, because this isn't that kind of story and I'm not interested in giving you a fairy tale. What I will tell you is that I am genuinely happy. Not performing happiness, not convincing myself to be okay. Actually, quietly, solidly happy in the way that you only really appreciate if you've come through something that tried to take it from you. And Nicole? Last I heard, she and Ryan didn't last. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't expecting that. A relationship that starts in deception tends to have a shaky foundation. When the thing that connected you was a secret, what happens when the secret is gone? I don't know the details and I don't need to. I don't follow her life. I have my own. But here's what I keep coming back to. That Tuesday at the mall. The parking garage. The Florida heat. Earl with his gray mustache and his 22 years and his decision to do the right thing when it would have been so much easier to just keep walking. One small act of honesty from a stranger changed everything. I think about that when I'm tempted to stay quiet about something that matters. I think about what would have happened if Earl had talked himself out of it, if he'd decided it wasn't his business or that I might react badly, or that it was just too much trouble. My life would look completely different right now. I'd still be going home to a house where I was the only one not in on the secret. I'd still be explaining away the face-down phone and the late nights and the gym at odd hours. Sometimes the most important thing someone can do for you isn't grand. It's just honest. I sent Earl a gift card to his favorite restaurant about a month after the divorce was finalized. He sent me a text that said, "Thanks, son. How's the dog?" I told him Pretzel was doing great. He sent back a thumbs-up emoji and I genuinely laughed for the first time in a while. There are still Earls in the world. And I'm telling you this story, All of it, the parking garage and the photos and Dennis's kitchen and Tamara and Diane and Ryan's phone call and the cookout where Carla made me laugh without trying, because somewhere right now there's someone who's been explaining things away. Someone who's been assuming good intentions past the point where the evidence stopped supporting it. Someone who's been smoothing over the rough edges of something that maybe shouldn't be smoothed over. And if that's you, I want you to hear this from Kevin, 38 years old, Daytona Beach raised, owner of a dog named Pretzel. Still figuring things out but figuring them out honestly. Pay attention to what you've been choosing not to see. Not because everything you're afraid of is true, it might not be. But because you deserve to actually know the life you're living, not just the version of it that's easiest to believe. And if you ever find yourself in a parking garage and a security guard with a gray mustache asks if that's your wife, listen to him. I promise you it's worth it. And if you made it all the way through this story, if you've been with me from that parking garage to Pretzel sitting on Carla's feet, do me one favor. Hit subscribe. Not for the algorithm, not for numbers, but because stories like this one deserve to go somewhere. Because somewhere out there, someone needs to hear that it gets better. That being honest, even when it's hard, even when it cost me my marriage and 2 years of careful, painful work, it was still worth it. It was always going to be worth it. My mother said I wouldn't reach 1,000 subscribers. Let's make her call Dennis and apologize. He'd love that. Hey, before you go, drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching this from. I'm not just asking to be polite. I genuinely want to know because this channel is growing fast and I want to see exactly who this story reached today. It matters to me more than you know. And listen, I already know we've got some incredible people tuning in. To every viewer watching from the United States, you are the backbone of this channel and I see you. To my people in the Philippines, your support has been absolutely unreal. You show up every single time and I don't take that for granted for even 1 second. To everyone watching from Canada, you guys are quiet but loyal and I respect that energy completely. In New York, you already know. New York never misses. Never. So, drop your location in the comments. Just your city, your state, your country, wherever you're watching from. Let's see how far this story traveled today. And if this story hit home for you, share it with one person. Just one. Because somewhere out there, somebody needs to hear that they're not crazy for trusting their gut, and your share might be the thing that finds them. I'll see you in the next one.